And just as a reminder, I'll turn some of your video feeds off so that we can just have council be up at the moment. I need just a couple seconds to let this buffer. 2, 1. Okay, the meeting is yours, Mr. Colwell. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to our regular board meeting of July 21st, 2020 at 7 p.m. Although we are an electronic meeting, we certainly appreciate the participation that is there. Residents may call in via 1312.
Have entered any numbers. Please re-enter your meeting ID.
67. And if you want to speak at that time, which we will have our public comment, you hit the star now, and that will automatically set up the raise your hand. And Ken Milburn, our meeting host, will allow you in at that time. Are you there, Ken?
I'm here, Mr. Colwell. You kind of cut out. If you want to repeat that phone number and then the feature to raise your hand, that would be great.
The phone number is 1-312-626-6799. And the feature is *9. So I hope everybody could hear that.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:02. I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
It just stands one nation.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please do roll call?
Mr. Colwell,
Yes, here.
Mr. Lilly's here, Mr. Roman,
Here.
Mr. Ruggles,
Here.
Mr. Powell,
Here.
Andrea Voorhees,
Present.
Liz Smith.
Here.
Very good.
Present.
I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. Mr. Lilly,
Make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
were we indeed going to do a part 2 on 12D? Station about the part 2 on 12D. Mr. Roman,
I would at least put it on. The board doesn't have to act, but I think you need to at least get it on the agenda.
part 2 on 12D is a deferral. I'd like to add that to the agenda, please.
Make a motion to amend.
I have a motion. Looking for support. Roll call vote.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Colwell.
Yes. So noted.
I apologize for the interruption, Supervisor. I didn't hear who was the support on the motion.
I believe that was Powell, wasn't it?
That was Mike Powell.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. Next item is item number 5, which is public comment. At this time, if you care to comment on anything on the agenda, you will be recognized. You'll be given 3 minutes, *9, and we will listen to what you have to say. We will not be able to answer questions with that. We hope that we can answer your questions throughout the meeting this evening. So if you have a comment at this time, your feature is *9. Mr. Milburn.
We have many callers on the line, Mr. Colwell. Again, if you'd like to speak, if you press *9 on your keypad, that will alert us that you would like to speak, and we will call on you.
Give it a moment. Roman?
Rick, I know Terry was going to make a comment about that letter that got mailed out. Terry, now might be a great time, if you are allowed to make that comment.
Yeah, Mike, I just had a number of phone calls today, and people had a large amount of concern in regards to the special assessment that was set out. And just, is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
And I'd like everybody to know that the clerk is the recipient of the information and not necessarily the person that makes it out. But I wanted to express a concern, and particularly one from Liz, that her and I both spoke today, that we had talked several times in the past about including a section after what is would be considered the legal description of what we want to do, a little paragraph to try to, in short term, to try to explain to our residents what the garbage assessment was all about. And I am going to reiterate that again, that we need to make sure that those things are very clear, because there's a lot of paperwork that's involved in the consideration and finally to get to the township board that really isn't important to the residents unless they ask for it. But I would like us to go back to what we originally talked about, and it's putting in that paragraph in layman's terms what this means to them. I appreciate to express that opinion also.
Okay.
Mr. Cowell, there's been a couple more callers that have joined us. I just want to remind any of the callers that if you'd like to make a comment, please press *9 on your keypad.
That's all I have, Rick.
Supervisor
sorry,
Cowell, is it appropriate for me to comment now as well, just off of Clerk Lilly? I feel the same way, that I'm hoping that our board in the future could either put a cover letter or a paragraph at the bottom, just in layman's terms, more common talk, to be able to explain to our residents what that procedure means. So if we could work that out in the future when we send out legal notices, I would greatly appreciate it, so that you know, our staff isn't having to filter so many questions, and of course, most importantly, that our residents are understanding what's actually happening.
Exactly, and that's a practice that I have implemented. For some reason, this letter in its entirety escaped that process, and I don't have an explanation. I will look into it as to why. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone at this time?
Mr. Supervisor, if you could just announce, the people online might be waiting till the agenda item. If you're not going to open the agenda item, you might want to let them know now that you're not going to.
We are going to open the agenda items at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We are required as public hearing. So any of the items that are for public hearing, they will have their opportunity to speak. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Cowell, there are no hands raised at this time.
All right, moving on out of public comment in the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk? Gary?
We done with the public comment?
Yes, moving on.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve the the consent agenda. Looking for support.
Or
I have support from Scott Ruggles. Roll call vote, please.
Ruggles,
yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes,
Andrea Voorhees,
Andrea, you're muted.
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Cowell.
Yes, thank you. Next item, item 7, approval of the minutes of regular board meeting of June 16th, 2020. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing as none, making a motion, I will make a motion to approve. Looking for support.
Andrea will support that.
I have motion, support, roll call vote, please.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Cowell.
Yes. Item number 8, presentation. Ken, if you can let Kathy DeRocher in, please.
I'll bring her up now.
Item number 8 is presentation, which is to afford recognition of a master municipal clerk certification by our current clerk, Mr. Terry Lilly. And I'm going to turn it over to our deputy clerk, Kathy DeRocher. Kathy?
Thank you. I am pleased to present Clerk Lilly with the Master Municipal Clerk certification. As you may know, the certification is awarded to clerks and deputy clerks who complete many rigorous hours of continued education and professional development in the municipal clerk's profession. It is sponsored by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks and highly regarded in the clerking world. Keep in mind, this advanced certification can only be achieved after first earning the Certified Municipal Clerk designation, which takes at least 3 years to accomplish. Terry has worn many hats in his 20-plus years of service to this community. He's been a firefighter, a building official, a supervisor, a trustee, and currently 12 years as Township Clerk. He's the kind of leader that isn't afraid to get dirty and get in the trenches with his team. He opens doors, he listens to his employees, and he thanks us, especially after a hard day. He moves forward with changes, and as we all know, there have been many of them this year with the new ways we do business in light of COVID-19. He has a vision for the future. He uses the professional tools of the clerk's trade, such as implementing an electronic record keeping and initiating the codification of all township ordinances so they can easily be found online. Terry exemplifies the principles of lifelong learning and Master Municipal Certification represents. Congratulations, Terry.
Way to go, Terry.
A lot of work, I'll tell you. Well, thank you, Kathy, very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to item 9, old business. Mr. O'Neill? Mr. O'Neill?
I'm here.
Okay, this will be in reference to the second reading rezoning request of the White Lake Car Wash. This is a zoning only matter at this time, correct, Mr. O'Neill?
That is correct. This request was before you on June 16th for first reading after being at the Planning Commission for consideration and a public hearing on June 4th. It's a pretty straightforward request. We talked about it at length last month. This is the property that's located on 4.91 acres, and it's immediately south of the Discount Tire at M59 and Fisk, and just west of the dance studio. So if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. But again, this is 4.91 acres located on the south side of 59. Parcel ID number is 12-23-202-006. And the request is to rezone from local business and R1C single family residential to general business GB. So this is second reading or adoption of the map amendment, whichever way you'd want to phrase it. But again, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Any questions from or comments from the board members, please? Mr. Lilly.
Now, if there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Please do so.
Already described as parcel 12-23-202-006, consisting of 4.91 acres from local business and R1C, single family, to general business, subject to all the consultants and the planning department review comments. And when those are ready, authorize the supervisor to sign.
I have a motion by Mr. Lilly. Mr. Roman.
I'll support Terry's motion.
I have a motion and support. Roll call vote, please.
Paul,
Yes.
Andrew Voorhees,
yes,
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes,
Mr. Roman,
Yes,
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Kowal.
Yes, motion carries.
7 yes votes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lilly. Okay, moving on to item number 10, a public hearing with resolution. This is the one that there seems to be some confusion on. This is a renewal of an existing special assessment. The letter that went out from the assessor's office was to inform residents that there will be a renewal of an existing SAD. It refers to our trash collection contract that expires later this year. This has been subject matter at previous meetings, and all meetings are public and viewable. And all the notes and meetings themselves are reviewable on YouTube as well as in the township archives. This is not, I repeat, not an additional tax, only renewal at an adjusted rate over the next 5 years. So that being said, what I would like to do at this time is open it for public comment. And again, this is a public hearing. At this time, only the public will comment during this time. The board members will keep their comments till after. So again, anyone out there, it would be *9. Again, *9 will let you into the meeting. And Mr. Bill Milburn.
Yes, Mr. Kowal, there are quite a few callers. I do not see any virtual hands raised. Again, if you'd like to speak, as was mentioned, if you press *9 on your keypad, we will be alerted and we will unmute your line.
Okay, and at this moment, I have to take the formal motion and open the public public hearing on the motion to establish a district for the special assessment for residential refuse collection project 2021-25. I make a motion. I need support.
Support.
I support from Mr. Ruggles. Roll call vote, please.
Voorhees. Andrea,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
I believe this is absolutely proper for the residents in the township, and so I vote yes.
Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Lily votes yes. Mr. Kowal,
Yes. We are now open for the public hearing. At this time, if you have something that you want to say regarding this subject matter, *9. Ken?
I'm seeing no hands raised at the, oh, we do have a hand raised now. Okay, before I call on you, again, a reminder to the caller, please state your name and address for the record. So the caller with the last 4 digits of 7305, I will unmute your line. Go ahead, caller. Number 7305, go ahead, caller.
Hello, my name is Jean-Philippe Leuve, 247 Rosario Lane. And I had just a comment because currently at the end of November, when the leaves are fallen, it always feels like the trees are still leaves falling, and it's always too late to pick them up. So is there a way to collect longer in the year, or is there a location where we can bring these on? Because every year it feels like it's a little bit trouble. It seems always to be not late enough in the year to get rid of them.
I will address that because that's a direct question. The answer would be we have talked to the service, and they have agreed to go into the first full week of December.
Okay, so the contract is slightly different, is updated to have an extra weekend. Good, thank you.
Correct. Right. We will have a little more time.
Thank you. I close my comments.
Very good. Anyone else at this time?
I'm seeing no hands raised at this time, Mr. Kowal.
If there is no hands at this time, I will close public comment at this time. I make a motion to close the public comment. Looking for support.
Andrea will support that.
Andrea, did you support that?
I did.
Okay, I will support. Roll call vote, please, Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Rob Ruggles,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Kowal.
Yes, thank
You
you.
have 7 yes votes.
Okay, and the second part of this is our resolution 20-023 to establish a special assessment district to be known as the Residential Refuse Collection Project 2021-2025. Any questions or comments from the board members, please? Mr. Ruggles,
I would just make a motion to approve resolution 20-023.
I have a motion.
Support.
Mr. Powell has support, motion and support.
Before you vote, I just want to change all of the resolutions today to reflect the current executive order. I don't think it's a substantive issue. I don't think it should be an issue with regard to your motions, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. So we'll be changing the executive order number to reflect the most recent number.
Thank you, as this is the ever fluid situation of which we have discussed earlier this week with several of the board members actually about different things. So thank you very much. We have motion, we have support, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Kowal.
Yes,
No, 7 yes votes.
motion carries, thank you. Next item 10B is a hearing to establish the Mannon Lake Improvement Special Assessment District along with the resolution. This district is again a renewal of a lake maintenance SAD that has been going on for a number of years. It is not a new tax, it is a renewal for the improvement and betterment of Mandan Lake. I am going to make a motion to open the public hearing at this time, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mr. Roman. I would like a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kowal.
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Scott Ruggles.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
Have 7 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion carries. We are now in public hearing for the Mandan Lake Improvement Special Assessment District. Anyone at this time from Mandan Lake that would like to comment on that, please push *9. Mr. Milburn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kowal. Again, we have many callers on the line. As was mentioned, *9 will alert us that you would like to speak, and we will unmute your line. We do have a caller here, Mr. Kowal. Caller with the phone number, the last 4 digits, 3666. We will unmute your line, and again, as a reminder, please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Dawn Martin, 9151 Ashdown Avenue. I was just wondering what all this entails. For, like, what does it all include? Like, what is included in the Mandan Lake Special Assessment?
You would have to talk to the people the association that forwarded it. They give us just the direction that they want to have that district so that they can have the economic and wherewithal means to provide services. I do not have a grocery of specific services. That's something that would have to go to the board and find out, your board.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for calling.
Okay, one last call for the callers. *9 on the keypad alerts us you'd like to speak. Any other callers? Okay, seeing no other callers, Mr. Kowal?
Seeing no other callers, I'm making a motion to close the public hearing. Looking for support. Mr. Lilly, support it. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kowal.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
We have 7 yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. The hearing is now closed. Now it brings us to the second item. Second part was a resolution 20-022 to establish a special assessment district for the Mandan Lake improvement 2021 through 2025. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Powell?
Could one of the staff remind me how this works logistically? Obviously, we're establishing a special assessment district. Does the association determine what work's being done, and then how do they receive the funds from the township?
Janine?
Yeah, normally the work is completed and it's approved by a member of their association, and then it comes to the township to pay out of the special assessment fund.
Is there a formal resolution from the entire association, or is it just a letter from anyone on the association?
It'll usually come to an officer of the association, Mike.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would like to make a motion to pass resolution 20-22 to establish a special assessment district for Mandan Lake improvement 2021 through 2025. Looking for support.
Support.
I have motion, I have support. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Kowal?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item, excuse me, item 10C, a hearing to determine to undertake an improvement project to establish special assessment district for Sunset Taylor Road maintenance 2021 through 2025. Again, a renewal of an existing maintenance agreement, SAB. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing, and I am making a motion to open the public hearing for said assessment. Looking for support.
Support.
Support by trustee Smith. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Kowal?
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion carries. We are now open, and at this time, if anyone would like to comment on the SAD regarding the road improvement and maintenance on Sunset/Taylor Road, please do so at this time by pushing the *9. Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Mr. Kowal. Again, we have plenty of callers. *9 on your keypad will alert us that you would like to speak. And we're not seeing any callers. We do have one more caller here to add to the audience. For the new caller that just came online, if you press *9 on your keypad, it will alert us that you would like to speak. We do have a caller that would like to speak, Mr. Kowal. The caller with the last 4 digits of their phone number being 2142. We will unmute your line. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Hello, this is Travis Siegel, 9393 Buckingham. Just had a reference in terms of how you guys propose for assessments for certain situations on our taxes on behalf of Weir on Buckingham. How are those taxes applied to, the assessments and what you guys are approving?
I guess I don't completely understand the question, but whenever an assessment is put on, it's usually for a specific purpose, whether it's maintenance or an improvement. And again, it's up to the individual groups that come to the township, for those particular.
If I can chime in just quickly as well, because I couldn't understand you, Mr. Supervisor. These are not general tax dollars that are being talked about for any specific use. This is a special assessment, and only those people that are benefited by the work will be assessed for this. So no tax dollars are being used for this work.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Powell. I don't know technical difficulties, but for some reason.
And
Okay.
again, sorry, Mr. Cole, I was just going to mention to the callers one last time, star 9 on your keypad will alert us that you would like to speak. We do have another caller, Mr. Kowal. Caller with the last 4 digits of the phone number 0790. We will unmute your phone. Please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller. Caller, last 4 digits 0790. Please state your name and address for the record. Okay. I'm not sure what is happening with this caller. Maybe we'll come back to them.
They did unmute.
Yep, they're unmuted now. Caller 0790, do you have a comment? Okay, apparently not.
Okay. Any other takers?
No other hands raised at this time, Mr. Kowal.
Okay. That being said, I will make a motion to close the public input, public hearing at this time. Make a motion looking for support.
Support.
Support from Mr. Roman. Roll call vote, please.
Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Cowell,
Yes.
we have 7 yes votes.
Motion carries. Second part of this is resolution 20-024. Determine to undertake an improvement project and to establish and maintain a special assessment district for Sunset Taylor Road maintenance. Making that in the form of a motion, looking for support. Thank you, Mr. Lilly. I have support. Roll call vote, please.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, Mr. Powell.
Is it my understanding that this vote will just establish the SAD and we will have a assessment roll public hearing next month?
I believe that is the case.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. We've established, we're looking for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Cowell.
Yes.
We have 7 yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 11, resolution 20-025, the Cooley Lake Mute Swan Removal. As some of you know, from time to time, we do have some residents that have difficulties with aggressive swans. This is an aggressive swan removal request. There will still have to be permits and guidelines followed by the DNR regarding this matter. So this is not, and by any means, a permit for open season on the swan. There is a procedure and a protocol that has to be followed by the state. Any questions from the board or questions or comment at this time? None being said, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 20025, approving a 5-year permit for aggressive mute swan removal.
I have a motion looking for support.
I have one clarification. Mr. Supervisor, you said it's for a particular swan. Is that, you're just picking up a little bit on me. I just wanted to be able to hear you.
It's what they classify as a mute swan, and which one particular species, and it's only for aggressive swans. Swans that literally attack people and chase their jet skis around and other things.
Thank you. It was just your sound, and I just wanted to be certain I heard you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
curious, Mr. Supervisor, if any of our callers wanted to talk on this topic.
We can open the line at this time. Again, it's *9. If someone has a comment that they would like to say, you'll have to state your name for the record. And
Thank you, Mr. Kowal. I am seeing no hands raised at this time. Again, caller *9 alerts us. It raises your virtual hand on this side. Lets us know that you'd like to speak. And I'm seeing no callers at this time, Mr. Kowal.
seeing none, moving on. We have motion, we have support. We need a roll call vote.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Ray Voorhees,
yes,
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman,
Yes,
Mr. Kowal.
Yes,
We have 7 yes votes.
thank you. Motion carries. 11B, that's an intent resolution 20-021 to tentatively declare its intention to establish a special assessment district to be known as an emergency sewer hookup 2020/2001. The board will recall, and the public may not know, that it was the thought process of this board a few years back to create an annual or biannual, whatever the need was, special assessment district when we have emergency sewer hookups. So we could assist individuals to hook up to the sewer. This particular group, I believe at this time, it has 3 members, and we are looking to move this forward as we have done the last several years. Janine, is it indeed 3 members?
yep.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lilly.
I'd just like to make a comment that this fund has been set up only for those that have a actual sewer failure, or I should say septic failure, and we have provided a 10-year assessment to try to help those people.
Mr. Powell.
I'd like to refer to this maybe in item 12D below. Would it be at all possible to use this fund to not only connect, but extend a sanitary sewer to take care of an emergency situation?
That is a very good question. It was not I believe, the intent of the board at the time that it was passed. It was there to be as a service to persons. My thoughts and understanding and clarity of it was the persons that have a sewer available to them, but may not have the economic wherewithal to pay the fee all at one time. That was the original intent. I would be more than happy in the future to entertain anything that we can talk about using some of the PA 188 money as we move forward for such issues, because they are going to continue to rear their ugly head in this township, and we need to take a look at that and decide how we're going to address them. Thank you, Mr. Powell. Okay, where were we? Did we get a motion? Any other questions from the board?
No. No.
Okay. I would like to make a motion for resolution 20021 to tentatively declare intention to establish a special assessment district to be known as the emergency sewer hookup 2020/2001. That is a motion. Looking for support.
Support.
Mr. Lilly, support. Roll call vote, please.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes,
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman,
yes,
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Powell, Yes.
Mr. Kowal.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 11C, Resolution 20-026 to approve a residential solid waste collection agreement with GFL Environmental USA 2021 through 2025. At the direction of our attorney, we have decided to put this into a resolution. as we follow the different format. Ms. Hamami, do you care to comment?
I only wanted to comment in that you can take items 11C and 12A together because the resolution is drafted in such a way that by passing the resolution, you're approving the contract because it's an exhibit to the resolution.
And therefore, we shall do just that. Any comments or questions from the board? Mr. Powell?
We were asked by a caller earlier whether or not this contract has in it the extension by a week of the recyclables or the leaf pickup. Is that in this contract, or do we have to make it subject to this the modification?
No, it has been extended.
Yep.
I knew that it was a concern that residents had. So when Trish and I were in the process of talking to GFL, they were very accommodating and understood the need.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Roman?
Yeah, just want to make sure the board is aware that we were approached late last week by another waste hauler known as Priority Waste. I just want to comment, sometimes timing is everything. We've already negotiated a new 5-year agreement with GFL. And in my opinion, this agreement is certainly competitive. The feedback on GFL from our residents has been very positive. To jeopardize that relationship that we have with GFL, I don't believe would be in the best interest of White Lake Township. So it's my thought, again, looking out for the best interest of our township. I do believe that this board should approve the GFL contract and at the same time begin to learn a little bit more about priority waste for the future. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Mr. Lilly?
Now, Rick, I know last time we went through this, we had a similar situation that at the last moment that a trash hauler had approached the board, and it really ended up to be a fiasco that the board didn't have enough time to really get into what really needed to do. It's been months in the making with renewing this contract. So I think the current garbage hauler, even though that they took over the previous contract, have done an excellent job for us. Just like.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Mr. Ruggles? Mr. Ruggles?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I'm not sure if the board remembers, but when the contract from the public GFL last time, I wasn't a huge fan of it. But over the past, has it been 3 or 4 years now with them, I've been pretty impressed with their performance and quite happy. So I think for me personally, when we're looking at a contract like this with White Lake Township, performance is critical. So I'm definitely happy with it. I agree with Terry and Mike. We have no idea really who this other company is, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Mr. Roman?
Rick, I think it would be wise to see if any callers were calling on this topic as well.
We will cue it in as soon as the rest of the trustees are done speaking. Anyone else have any comments? Mr. Powell?
I've not only been impressed with them, but if you recall the last time we did a public bidding, it was extremely difficult. We spent a great deal of money doing it. So I totally agree with the representation on the board thus far. And also kind of a point of interest. I took a recent vacation out in Denver, Colorado, Monument, Colorado, and lo and behold, GFL is out there as the main contractor out in Denver, Colorado. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, had no idea they were nationwide.
Yeah, they're not only nationwide, they're international. They started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Former hockey player.
Yes.
Okay. Liz Smith, please. You're mute, Liz. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just wanted to quickly touch base on this resolution this evening because I have been contacted by many residents, And I just want to let the residents know that are listening tonight that don't always join us monthly. We've been talking about this for 3 months in great detail, and those meeting minutes, everything our board does is public, and we are very transparent, and all the information is available, and our board is here to help you and assist you and explain things to you, answer questions. So I just wanted to mention that for anybody that's joining us, particularly of interest on this agenda items tonight, that our board has discussed this in detail for months. And I believe, we have explored all the options and answered GFL a lot of questions to make sure that we're making the best possible decision for our residents. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I have had nothing but rave reviews about of GFL. I've called them a couple times to reach out for them for recycling bins for the Fisk Farm, and they were very receptive, very helpful. In a sense, I just had someone text me like, "Why switch it? It's a good plan. Keep with it. It's not broken."
And a comment on their public service to the community. We recently had a group that has a group of some very special kids that need some assistance and was doing a bottle and can drive. And GFL came to the rescue and provided multiple containers to be used for that particular drive at no cost to that group or the township. So they have been very civic minded in our community. So I don't have any complaints.
Thank
Okay,
you for sharing that.
Yes, now I'd like to take this time and open up to the public if anyone has anything to say. Mr. Roman.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment to the board. Last month, when we discussed this renewal, I know a few of the board members were concerned with the performance bond that GFL was going to put up. Rick, I just want to compliment you on negotiating what I think is a terrific deal in regard to that bond. If you could maybe just kind of summarize what it was. I forget the specifics, but I know you got GFL to come to the table.
Yeah, the ante's been raised considerably to 50% of their annual fee that they charge us. So we're in good shape from a bond standpoint.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, again, I'd like to move to the public if we can. Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Mr. Kowal. We do have a caller with their hand raised again. For the other callers, if you'd like to make a comment, please press *9 on your keypad, and we will be alerted that you would like to speak. So we're going to start with the caller of the phone number with the last 4 digits of 4351. We will unmute your line, and please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, my name is Jim Balicki. My address is 10609 Emwood Court, and I'm calling about the 11B, the emergency sewer hookup. And I see there's a date for a support meeting on August 18th, and I approve of that and will be there.
Thank you, sir. We are taking comment on the trash, but thank you very much for that comment. Ken?
Okay, one last call to the callers. If you'd like to speak, press *9 on your keypad. Okay, I see no other. Oh, we do have one now, Mr. Kowal. The caller with the last 4 digits of 1929. We will unmute your line, and again, please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, everybody. My name is actually Dan Vinay. I have been the representative from Priority Waste that reached out to everybody. I just wanted to say thank you, first off, for mentioning our company during your meeting, and can completely understand your thought process and your decision as it stands right now. We hope that in the future we can be considered for future projects with your township. And again, I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And one last call for the caller, star 9 on the keypad. Alerts us that you would like to speak. I'm seeing no others at this time, Mr. Cowell.
Okay, seeing no others at this time, we are moving on. And we are going to combine the two items, 11C and 12A, in the resolution 20-026 to approve a residential solid waste collection agreement with the GFL Environmental USA 2021 through 2025. I'll put that in a in a motion, looking for support.
Andrea will support.
Have support by Andrea Voorhees. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Kowal.
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Both motions carry. Thank you. Next item will be 12B, approval of plan development agreement, a New Hope White Lake. Mr. O'Neill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So as most of you probably recall, at a recent meeting, you considered the rezoning to plan development and preliminary site plan for New Hope. They were back to the Planning Commission with their final site plan and their plan development agreement on the 16th of this month, at which time the Planning Commission approved the final site plan. There were a few minor conditions, and the plans were overall in really good shape. And then they recommended the plan development agreement, which is in front of you tonight, for approval. And the only conditions really were the comments that were in the review letters that were attached in your packet. They were very minor. Some were stylistic, others were just kind of for the purposes of clarification. And the one thing I'll add that is not included tonight, but that I think is important to mention, is that if the applicant's unable to physically install the off-site sidewalk or pathway that will run north from their property to Benny Lane along the west side of Williams Lake Road, that similar to what we did in the trail side, or which you approved in the trail side meadow plan development agreement, will allow them to make a contribution to the pathway fund or a pathway fund. So what really needs to happen now is the applicant's engineer and our engineer need to just have a conversation and come up with a construction cost estimate on the sidewalk or pathway that we can all agree upon, and that would be filled in or written into the development agreement, so that way everyone understands the amount that is really in play if the sidewalk or pathway cannot be physically installed. So that would be the only thing besides the review comments that you'd expect to see added. And I guess my request would be that if you would consider approving this, subject to all the comments, as well as the insertion of the dollar amount that's agreed upon by staff and consultants, and then allow the supervisor to sign it. I think we'll be off to the races on this one. I know Rumi's here and is probably happy to answer any questions you might have. And I am also ready to answer any questions you may have as well.
Okay, at this time, any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Powell.
I can't express how pleased I am that this use found this site. It really can't be a more perfect use for this particular site. It's isolated. It protects the surrounding residential communities. It's going to be a low intense. I think it's going to be not only a welcome addition to the township, but a welcome addition to the residents in that area.
Yeah, if I could, just so you are aware, Rumi continues to have dialogue with the neighbors on all sides. And a couple of weeks ago, I had asked him, we had discussed some tree clearing in the future if everything goes well with these meetings. And I asked him in his conversations with the neighbors if he would offer to, show them around his site, show them where the tree clearing would begin, just so that way when it did start, assuming that the project moved forward, they were comfortable with it. And he invited them out. They took a walk around the property. He continued to answer questions and, really invite them into the process. And, anytime an applicant does that, it really makes my job easier because I'm generally that go-between. And in this case, he's been very open and very inviting to them. And so I appreciate him doing that and being so open and available to the residents. That's given them some comfort, and I've heard that back from them as well. So thank you, Rumi.
Appreciate it.
Very good. Mr. Lilly?
I'd just like to support Mike's comments, Mike Hall's comments in regards to the site itself. Excellent project for that piece of property. And I'd like to also thank the members of our administration that helped them get to that particular site. It couldn't be any better as far as I'm concerned, and I would be willing to make a motion if
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Sean, I just have, Mr. O'Neill, I have one question of clarity when you were talking about pathways. I believe last month we talked a lot about making it a nice environment for the residents within the property, a walkable community. So are you talking about the pathways within the property or sidewalk down the main road? Just could you please clarify that?
Sure. Great question. So the sidewalk I was mentioning, or pathway I was mentioning, is the one that's along Williams Lake Road. They've got about 200 feet of frontage, and they'll be installing their pathway. And as part of the community benefit that was offered, they were going to extend it several hundred feet further north to cross Benny Lane. But if he needs easements or it just becomes physically impossible to install that safely, then he wanted to have another option. And I certainly support that, as did the Planning Commission. So if a pathway is not practical or possible, then he would instead convert that improvement to a donation to a pathway fund so that we can make some other meaningful connections elsewhere in the township.
Okay.
But just to go back to the other part of your question, the applicant did improve the walkability on the site. There's quite a grade from the building down to the road, and it's not really a safe grade for pedestrians that may have mobility issues. And so they did not want to encourage walking from the building down to Williams Lake Road because of that. But instead, they expanded some of the outdoor amenities. They're putting a gazebo in and a walking path outside the front door for family members to take their loved ones outside of the building. And then there's interior courtyards, 3 of them that are quite large, that have pathways that meander through them and plantings and things like that. They're very sizable, and Rumi could probably, if you wanted to hear more about them, talk about their size. But they're several thousand square feet each, and they're and I don't know, Rumi, if you have a screen to share, if you wanted to do that, or if the board had those questions, but they're quite attractive, and the Planning Commission was pretty happy with the result.
That sounds lovely. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtfulness to make the grounds usable for residents and their family members. Thank you very much for thinking of that. And then I'm of course a big supporter of pathways and sidewalks in the township. So I hope that is possible. And if it's not, thank you for making the concession of the pathway fund where we can, perhaps connect somewhere else. But I'm fingers crossed that it works out there. And again, thank you for making the grounds so thoughtful for residents.
I appreciate the comments. Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to, I don't want this to sound like the mutual admiration society, but I have to point out that Rick and Sean and Hannah, and then everyone on the team, Aaron Potter, they've been super helpful. They get the credit because they helped us identify this site. And they also, Sean said to me, we need to work with the neighbors, which gave us the opportunity starting Christmas time to start meeting and talking to them. And it was heartwarming to see them come to or call into the Planning Commission meeting 2 months ago and support the project. And at the end of the day, for us, we are becoming a part of the fabric of the community in White Lake, and it sets us up on the right footing. I appreciate the feedback on sort of the outdoors walkability and the gazebo and the walkways that we have added. I think will provide more of those opportunities, and we can't get for me, sort of, I'm ready to get the show on the road. I know we have to pull a few permits in the next week or so, but as we are doing it, I would encourage you. Some of you folks already are there on this, have probably been and visited the site. The beautiful part of it is when you are standing where the building will go up, you literally are surrounded by acres and acres of wooded area. And we put up a retention wall that's going to cost us about close to $300,000. But by putting up that retention wall on the perimeter, we'll be saving literally hundreds of trees as well. So I think it's a win-win. When you are in the site, you have a prairie or a meadow-like feel, and it's going to be therapeutic. And I have to give credit to Sean and Rick, because they pointed us to the site, so they get the credit for it. So again, thank you for your support, and we look forward to continue to working with the township as we move forward.
Thank you, Rumi, for those kind words, and the township certainly does appreciate everything. Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the plan development agreement for parcel 12-25-400-029, subject to any unresolved issues of our consultants, and authorize the supervisor to sign when complete.
Support.
I have a motion and I have support from Mrs. Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Kowal?
Yes.
We have 7 yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Rumi, welcome to the neighborhood. Let's get the show on the road here.
Thank you, folks. Have a blessed evening, folks. Take care. Stay healthy, stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Just a last little tidbit of information. There'll be a mixed use of units in there. It'll be memory care and enhanced memory care and some assisted living. So it's going to be a quiet use for that particular area. And when Sean and I were talking to Rumi, there was another site in mind. And then Sean and I both kind of went, okay. And so we had that in our little inventory and directed them to go in that direction. So it's a good fit, and it's going to minimize a big concern of the amount of traffic that's getting dumped out on the Williams Lake Road. So
Yes.
we're doing our part as a township to be mindful of these types of things. So thank you, board. Thanks for moving that along. Next item is 12C, the first reading of fee ordinance amendment. Any questions or comments on that?
I have a question.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, I was just curious as to why all the charges for the fire department are now $178. Must be a special.
Yeah, according to Mr. Holland, he calculated out his cost of time, and he has that basis of information to justify the cost of his fees.
Yeah, it's just a unique.
Mr. Lilly.
Also like to comment on the on that last inspection fee for a CEO. It seems like it's awful expensive. We consider that before next hearing.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, looking for a motion. Mrs. Smith.
So I understand it's first reading. How would you like us to address that, Mr. Supervisor? Just send in suggestions or speak with, the department heads if we have a suggestion for
Any particular item that you have a question on should be directed towards the department head. I would do it via email. No misunderstanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lilly.
Make a motion to move the fee ordinance amendment to second hearing.
I have a motion to move the fee ordinance to second hearing. Looking for support. I have support by Mr. Powell. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Kowal?
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Item 12D, clarification sanitary ordinance 38-418. There seems to be some question as to some interpretation. Ms. Hamami, do you have anything you'd like to add at the moment?
Well, this is Aaron's item, but I did have a conversation with Aaron regarding his request. And my understanding is there's some confusion with regard to the provision that he's referenced. And that provision is also inconsistent with comparable state law provisions. And Aaron would prefer it read consistent with state law. And so at this point, he's asking the township board to consider their interpretation, clarification of the intent of that section. And if this township board deems, after a reading of that section, that it should be read consistent with state law, then that would answer Aaron's immediate question. But Aaron and I have also been talking about, if this is how it should read, if this is how you want it, seeing as though once this township board makes a determination that this is how we're going to apply this provision, it's going to apply across the board to anybody that the situation arises for. And so Aaron and I discussed preparing a very short amendment to the sewer ordinance that would contain this clarification, i.e. making the language consistent with state law if this township board is in agreement with that, as well as making another change that would also address the next item. I'm sorry, Aaron, I just hijacked your entire argument.
I'm good with it.
Not a problem. If I understand, one says tomato, the other one says tomato. So we'll kind of see where this turns out. Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to make a comment. Wasn't aware of the attachment. Should have been part of this. Not had time to really look at that, but we had a discussion amongst the three elected officials, and I believe this ordinance or the interpretation of it seems to need a little more clarification, particularly in the fact that I think some of the requirements may be different commercial as opposed to residential, and we have not been opposed to given differences in the past. We've given several of those, but I think each one of those were passed on its own merits, and I have some concerns about making an action without seriously considering what this is being done for.
I'd actually like to comment on that, if I may. The intention here isn't to apply a variance to one particular property. What we're looking to get from the board tonight is some clarification of what the intention was, and was the difference in the code from the state health code actually intentional, or was it incorrectly written? We want to apply the code fairly and evenly to all residents of the township. And so, hopefully with this clarification, we will know how to, apply the board's wishes that you would like us to. To avoid any scenario where I'm making a one-off decision based on, I think that's going to get us into trouble in the long term.
Understood. Mr. Powell, I know you're itching to ask a question.
Yeah, I can state that it was an intentional deviation for the intent to promote the extension of sanitary sewers in the township. The more this item is relaxed, the more leeway there is to allow for a septic field to be installed instead of extending a sanitary sewer. Once a property owner puts in what is now an average cost of $40,000 for a septic field, they're certainly not going to be in favor of joining a special assessment district or establishing or joining the intent to extend a sanitary sewer into their subdivision or across their property or whenever. So the easier it is that we make it to allow for a septic system to go in, the less likely we're going to get to extend sanitary sewers. That being said, we also have a number of relatively deep parcels. Let's say you have a 100-foot wide parcel that's 600 feet deep. The house is 300 feet back. You're going to get a no vote from a person on a parcel that really could use a sanitary sewer, and their expense is relatively small because they're back 200 feet from the property line, which means they, by definition, if this is changed, are out of the reach of that sanitary sewer. So they no longer even have to approach the township for a sewer or for an approval for a variance. I understand Terry's concern because if you change this overall, you're not going to be able to evaluate each individual site specifically. So if you had a sanitary sewer within 100 feet of somebody's property, and it could be extended to them, but they're 100 foot back, they no longer even have to come to the board for a decision as to whether or not that should be done. Now, there's two ways to approach this, and I'm certainly willing to look at both based upon the position of my colleagues on the board. As you know, I am a major proponent of extending sanitary sewers. I believe that this township should be extending sanitary sewers in areas where septic fields and the residential communities are old. The septic fields are going to fail. We have a lot of areas in the township where it's environmentally sensitive areas and the septic systems are failing. If this township board, and there are any number of ways that we could extend sanitary sewers, and the township is a little more proactive on this, and we've had a couple examples that this board has decided not to pursue. If this board is not willing to be proactive and extend sanitary sewers with the funds we have on hand for the benefit of our residents, then we should change this, because it's onerous to have any property owner have to extend sanitary sewers on their own to their property and past their property at their expense and for really the benefit of their neighbors. In this particular case, in a particular case that is before the township, a property owner would have to extend it across somebody else's property, across their own property, to be able to tie into it. And this ordinance, as the way it's written right now, would require that. Personally, I believe the township ought to, in a case like this, step up, cause that sanitary sewer to be extended, spread that benefit cost over the parcels that are going to use it, and start extending our sanitary sewers. Keep in mind that we can extend a sanitary sewer a long way for the cost of a $40,000 engineered septic system that is going to fail again in 15 years. And we'll never get that sewer extended if we don't reach out and start doing it here in the township. So that being said, if the township board is willing to start being proactive on this, then we shouldn't change this, because it'll decrease the ability to promote the extension. If the township board is not willing to be proactive in extending sanitary sewers, then we should change this and not have it be so onerous on our residents. So I leave that discussion open to my board.
Very good. Mr. Lilly.
Again, I'd like to comment. Mike and I have had a lot of discussions over this, and I believe everything that Mike said. But I do not agree that people that are away from the sewer line have to pay for somebody else's frontage. I don't agree that by extending short pieces of main that we have to put in these catch basins, which is also a lot of large expense. And I don't agree that just one policy fits. And I've been very supportive of the fact of these deferral agreements to allow people that are not real close or have extenuating circumstances to be able to put off their costs in the future. I think the next item will probably be a little bit different discussion that we're even having now. But I really believe that this discussion needs to be well thought out. I think every board member needs to understand what this ordinance is really saying, because words change and interpretations change, and that has in the past and that is happening now. And like I say, I just want to make sure that this is well thought out, and being that probably 2 days to be able to review what's being proposed isn't quite enough time. I've been there for a while, and I know our trustees are fairly new to what's going on. So I'm asking for them just to take a little more time in consideration. And like I say, I don't disagree with what Mike said, but there are extenuating circumstances that need to be considered in these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Potter, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to clarify again, on that comment, when I discussed this matter with Lisa, this ordinance predates myself and predated Lisa. And so, you know, several of you board members were here at the time. And so that's, you know, exactly what we were looking at, was some clarification of the intention, just so that we're applying the code correctly the way you wanted us to when it was written.
Mr. Roman. Mr. Roman.
So the way the ordinance is written, the big difference between it and the states is that we look at the 200 feet from the boundary line as opposed to where the home sits.
Correct.
And it is strong language, as Mr. Powell mentioned. It's designed to bring more homes onto the sewer system. We've always applied it that way. If this is something that the board wants to change, I agree. This needs to be looked at in more depth. But that said, even the way it's written, when our GPS director tells us that forcing someone to hook up just doesn't make sense in the long run, I'm supportive of our GPS director. So,
Mr. Powell.
Yeah, boy, I can't agree more with everyone, including Mr. Potter. I would really be in favor, Mr. Supervisor, and I've been kind of looking for this, and unfortunately the COVID-19 has gotten in the way a little bit. I don't know, would it be possible to set up a study session in the next couple of weeks, and we could stay 6 feet apart in our new annex and discuss this at a little more length, and discuss the pros and cons and the different options we might have to help our residents in situations like this?
I'm willing to do what we can do as long as you meet the intent of the executive order. So we have to take a look at that, and we can look at that individually. If not, we can do a remote workshop.
Yeah, it's just difficult to point to things and talk back and forth. And I think we could stay 6 feet apart, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lilly?
Yeah, I just make an additional clarification. Mike's comment there. There hasn't been anybody on this board that has been more supportive of Aaron than what I have. And I truly believe he's the right man for the right job and whatever. But I do, as board member, with 2 days or notice to be able to review something and then find out this morning there's even, in addition to what's being presented, I think deserves a bit of time and consideration. And I don't discount thing that any of our board members, particularly Mr. Paul, in his comments. We've worked on this a long time and never sat down and really come to conclusions. And we have the pros and cons, and there's quite a few of them either way. So I guess I'm asking for the board to take a little more time for consideration. And in the meantime, if there's any issues, I think we should strongly consider those as far as a deferment or something like the last couple times. Thank you.
Ms. Hamami.
So poor Aaron, all he wanted was help in interpreting and applying a provision of his ordinance. And I stepped in because, as you know, I have concerns with varying from the terms of the ordinance. And so I suggested, if you feel it should be read consistent with state law, then let's just amend the ordinance. We do not have to delve into the specifics of this very lengthy ordinance and spent months and months and meeting and debating it. This is a very simple issue that I think we could sort through and get through. That conversation then also carried over into the deferral discussion you have next on your agenda, is that we continue to deviate from provisions. Well, if we feel the provisions aren't applicable or need work, then let's fix it, because you can't continuously grant these quote unquote variances. And I'll note, as you've already heard me say a zillion times, the sewer ordinance does not have a variance provision like the water ordinance does. So maybe the answer in response to Terry's concerns that there are unique circumstances that ought to be considered is that we put a provision in there that allows the township board to grant variances in these unique circumstances. We can put factors in there consistent with what we have for the water ordinance. So I'm very hopeful that you all would consider at least these couple of things that keep coming up, because this issue and the next issue comes up several times a year. And I think it's time now that we actually move on it, even if it's just to fix these few things.
Mr. Lilly.
Again, I just want to state that when we're talking about the 200 feet, it was not long ago we talked about 200 feet being to the property line, and that discussion took place over several commercial establishments, and this board felt very strongly as far as commercial that it was to the property line, because we were not going to businesses not to extend the sewers, as Mike has indicated. That so one rule here doesn't fit everything, and that's my concern. That if we're going to do it, let's take the time to think about what we're going to do. We may have to make an immediate adjustment. We can do it, but just changing the two, I don't agree that it should apply to residential like it does commercial.
Well, I can see that this is going to need some time talked about, and I do agree with Mr. Lilly and Mr. Powell that we do review this and take some consideration. I don't want to circumvent the process. However, you have a couple of residents, one in particular that's in need. We have one that has a failed septic system that needs to take some action. Now, I did have a conversation with the sanitarian, and a sanitarian did tell me that that property is able to sustain a new septic system or the repaired septic system. He was confident that there was not going to be an issue with this matter. So now it becomes, do we make an exception for this one and then go back and try to fix this to try to keep her moving on? Because she is trying to live in her home. And as well as I know, that the amount of time that could take to get this through the process could be rather lengthy, and I don't want to put any undue necessary stress on this. Mr. Powell, you're itching to say something.
Thank you for noticing that. You are absolutely correct. My concern is that again, if this one modification eliminates a person that needs a sanitary sewer, if it's eliminated, it'll be a decade before we get anybody else applying down this street. And so my concern is if we were to not have this requirement in the ordinance at all, despite what Lisa has said, if we made this easy to interpret and it never came back before the board, it'd be years, maybe decades before we would address a sanitary sewer issue. This issue being in here forces this board to rehear this and rethink it and maybe step out and one day come up with the maybe an ultimate approval. So in this particular case, I feel sorry for the lady, but I believe that there are ways to service her, and Aaron's going to shudder when I say this. A sanitary sewer service could be provided to her in 2 weeks, and it would be substantially less than an engineered septic system. But this board would have to agree, and the administration would have to agree that maybe we don't do everything exactly the way it has been done in the past in order to make it happen. And so that's why I was hoping to maybe have some time to be able to discuss it with the staff and Aaron so that we can get service to her without having to wait 3 months to do it.
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, you're right. I would shudder. We do have contract obligations with Commerce Township and Oakland County that we need to follow.
And I believe that I've had waivers from that in the past in order to solve problems. And so I'd like to share that with staff.
Yep.
Well, I can only make the recommendation, which I have to lean on Mr. Potter's best advice on this. We do need to try to remedy something for this resident, but I do not want Mr. Potter to be uncomfortable with the decision that could be made. So I do have to defer to the township engineer and Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter?
So I am very in favor of having a workshop to discuss this. We can talk about many examples. You know, I'm also in favor of, you know, some type of a deferral in this one instance. Like I say, I'm really not talking about this particular property with this, what I'm asking the board to do tonight. We do have folks in need, and maybe this might actually carry over into the next topic, as Lisa alluded to. Lisa, would you like, I mean, we could probably talk about this now.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused, but I may not have stuff that you have. I thought this was a general interpretation question. Are we speaking of a particular property? Do you have facts that you're weighing? Like, I guess
Well, there happens to be a parcel that over on in a street that's, the house is one house off the main.
Yep.
And is within the 200 feet. But once we start to adhere to our ordinance, we start with a patchwork quilt of a sewer system, of which is problematic, expensive to maintain, and inefficient. And that's why in this particular case, there may be the deferral to put into place simply because it's not a matter of practical, there's a practical difficulty there. And I believe that the township engineer and the DPS director should be allowed to decide these particular practical difficulties and their resolution through this process. Now, whether we amend our ordinance that allows them to do that, they are why they are there. That is their job. We can second guess this all day long. Now, we just happen to have Mr. Powell on the board, who happens to be a civil engineer and knows enough to be dangerous.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
And that's why we have to rely on our township engineer and our DPS director and not tie their hands. Okay. Mr. Lilly.
Again, Rick, I was kind of surprised today to find out that not only were we just considering this ordinance, but yet it applies to a particular situation. In this particular situation, the property, as again, it sits 2 parcels off of the main. I'm not opposed to bringing, giving this lady a deferment while we're talking about how to adjust this. And this is what we've done in the past to do that. But I'm concerned about how this is just making a general rule that the general rule is not going to help us with other circumstances in the future. I'm all for if this lady needs some immediate action or relief. And the cost, as you indicated, is pretty expensive to go across another person's frontage and install another catch basin or clean out whatever is required there to give her some relief. I don't have that in my package, so I apologize for that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Mr. Potter.
Yeah, again, just to be clear, we're not talking about just one property here. Right now, I'm working on, there's a property on Justwood. There's also property 2 houses in on Millward. There's also a property, 1 house in on Little Farm. All of these are the same issue. You've got this second parcel in. Usually it's the second or the third parcel in. Their property boundary closest to the main that's in the right of way is within 200 feet. So now you are forcing one resident, you know, in the case of Millward, the home may not be worth what the value of the sanitary extension is. And that, of course, that is basically killing the sale of that property. So it's not one property that we're talking about, it's properties and, you know, probably many more here to come as these, you know, old fields fail. This is going to keep coming up. And I think what Lisa was alluding to and Rick were alluding to, nothing in our ordinance allows me as a DPS director to offer a deferral or any variance or any kind of assessment of, you know, hardship or anything on these cases. So it forces me one at a time back to the board looking for individual deferrals.
And that's what I would like to eliminate, because no, I would like to see if we can craft some language, eventually craft language into a revision that will allow the township engineer and the DPS director to decide these practical difficulties and how to resolve these problems. And that's something to that effect. I didn't mean to run you over, Lisa, but that's the direction that I would like to see us go in as we move along to resolve this problem that will help solve other problems as well. Aaron, does that sound like something you would like?
I think we can definitely discuss it. And, you know, I'm in favor of workshops. I'm in favor of, you know, however we want to get together and solve these issues.
Liz?
Thank you. So I actually dived into this quite a bit and spoke to Mr. Potter in detail and Lisa, and I think instead of continuing, you know, bumping along with variances, that we really need to take a look at our ordinance and give Mr. Potter the tools that he needs. He's the boots on the ground and he needs to be able to serve our residents properly. So I would be very much in favor of a workshop and taking a look at this ordinance. I cannot speak to the intent of the original ordinance because I wasn't on the board at that time. But instead of just kind of patchworking and band-aiding it, I would very much like to take the opportunity to really look at the ordinance and redo it so we're best serving our residents.
If I could just make Rick, I'm sorry to interfere. It's so important for this board to stay involved. I have nothing but respect for Mr. Potter, but his decision would be totally different with these two scenarios. If this board says, Mr. Potter, in no way will this board give you any money to extend sanitary sewers for any reason, he will come to a different conclusion than if we say it's our goal to extend sanitary sewers and this board will in fact front money to extend sanitary sewers for the residents in the township. His decision will be different based upon our input on that.
I also had one thing. I wasn't quite finished.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'd like to know if the resident would like to speak if they're on the line. I would like to hear from the resident if they're here, or if they wish to be heard.
I'm not sure if we have numbers.
We do have a raised hand, Mr. Kowal, on one of the telephone lines.
Very good. Let's see who it is.
Okay, caller with the last four digits of 4351. We're going to unmute your line. Please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
James Balicki.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, we're part of the subdivision that talking about it in question. I agree that there should be a public meeting and workshops, but you don't know all the facts. First of all, there is no existing main to tie into along Elizabeth Lake Road. Our homes are 20 years old. We have 20 houses in our subdivision. There's one septic field that has failed. Everybody else in our subdivision has wonderful septic systems. I think this is a little overkill with this ordinance, and I would suggest, as I said earlier when I called in, that we have a meeting and let people in this subdivision come in and state their piece. The piece of paper I've seen has other subdivisions. I don't know how old they are or what their situation is, but I would a public meeting, and we would everybody in our subdivision would be more than happy to attend.
Mr. Balicki, do you live on Justwood?
We're on the southern part. Justwood comes up Elizabeth Lake, and it goes down to Emwood. We're at the south end of the subdivision.
There is indeed a main that goes down Elizabeth Lake Road. It's a primary main that runs all the way from M59 and up near Myers, all the way down to Union Lake Road and Elizabeth Lake Road down near Circus. So there is indeed sewer in that area.
I wasn't aware of that. I think it's a little bit from what I've been told by the resident who has the problem. She has been told that she has to foot the bill to bring this thing in. And I don't agree with that, and nobody in our subdivision also agrees with it. I mean, it should be either a township issue to put the sewers in, and a special assessment district should be created to have the residents book into that town purchased sewer. But we need to talk about this.
Yeah, that's the intent. The intent of the mention of Mr. Powell and Liz Smith and the rest of the board members, that we have the intention to do so, and also the township attorney. So thank you for your call. I certainly appreciate it.
And we would love to hear back from you, and we would be willing to come to a public meeting, workshop, whatever.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank
you. Mr. Roman?
Yeah, so just to let the board know, the way our sewer ordinance reads now, you have to be within 200 feet between the boundary of your property and the sewer structure itself. Justwood is certainly within 200 feet, but our ordinance also states that the sewer system has to cross, adjoin, or abut the premises. Justwood being the second home in, I think you could make an argument that sewer system doesn't cross, adjoin, or abut that property line. And I think that's gray enough that an exception could be considered by the board for Justwood because it's the second house in.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Potter.
Yeah, so I think that what Mike is alluding to is exactly what my intention was to bring this to the board. You know, I'm looking for some clarification there. If we apply this this way, then I would expect other folks to ask us to apply this in the same way on their parcel. And so well, it kind of goes back to what Mr. Powell was, if we make this decision now, we're effectively making a decision on the interpretation of this.
I'm
No,
not
that-
suggesting we make any changes, guys.
Correct.
However, we do have a home right now that's in failure, and I think we need to help the resident.
I would suggest we look at the option of deferred agreement. If the resident wants an immediate answer.
Eric, can you explain to the board what that deferment means?
Deferral.
So the deferral agreement would be, we would be deferring ordinance 38-514, which would say that they would have to extend across the frontage of their property to provide for future extension, something along those lines. And that I would ask the board to approve the township attorney to draft said agreement, and that any language or should include language that any future SAD would automatically include this parcel as a yes vote, thereby, if the other residents down here, the caller had mentioned this was the only failure in Jesswood. Discussions with the owner and the sanitarian from Oakland County was this was not the first failure in this neighborhood. It sounds like the second or third failure in the neighborhood. And so other folks were lucky enough to be far enough away that they didn't, qualify under available sanitary sewer. So the 200-foot rule did not apply to them. But this poor lady, and like I said, not just this lady, many areas in the township that are one or two parcels in adjacent to streets that we have township main. Most of those streets have stubs for extension that extend into those right of ways. So this comes up weekly, and so I would ask that in this case, if she is looking for some immediate relief from this ordinance, that this board could approve a deferral for this property and include the language that it would be included in any future SAD down the road. If these folks in the neighborhood, maybe these folks move out and future folks move in. If they want to have an SAD in this neighborhood, then, we've allowed this lady to get out of this ordinance. I think that's that issue for her immediate need.
Okay, Lisa, you want to chime in?
Yeah, might I suggest, I think that half the board is concerned because a decision today is going to be your decision going down the line.
Correct.
And this is a really important discussion to have. So might I suggest a special board meeting in a couple of weeks just to address this issue and to prepare whatever amendments that we need to fix this issue, and not, again, I know what it means to have to establish a committee and have ordinance amendments and rewrite the entire sewer ordinance. And I'm not suggesting that today. I'm suggesting just fixing these recurrent immediate issues and fixing them right away.
Lisa, I'm not that at all. We need to do something around this problem. I'm hoping that if we can do this by the next board, and we start working on this in the next week to 10 days, we should be able to remedy this. I am going to tell you, however, I am going to need participation from individuals. Obviously, Mr. Potter's key, Mr. Powell, and Lisa, you'll have to be responsive to anything that we need if we're going to get this done in a timely manner. So I'd be happy to put together a committee that will take a look at this and move forward. With that, I would make a motion to table this till next month's meeting.
I'll support.
Mr. Lilly?
Discussion, yeah, I would be very favorable of trying to find a way to help this particular lady to fix her particular problem, not let that linger on while discussions take place properly.
I agree.
Amend our ordinance.
This, if we go another month, this could cause this lady probably $1,200 in, or more in pumping and hauling.
Well, there are your choices. We don't do something tonight, we're going to have to move it forward, so.
Well, my suggestion would be to table, but not table for till next month. Can we have a special board meeting next month so that we're able to serve this resident quicker? I'm all in favor of tabling it, have a great discussion or a workshop, and really correcting it properly moving forward in the township. But I am very conscientious and compassionate that we have a resident that needs us right now. So can we have a special meeting perhaps to resident?
Yeah, as I am concerned, and I'm the one that brought this letter and brought it in as item, the second half of D2, so to speak. It does concern me. But those are the two choices. So you either put it off and we deal with it in a month and she sits and has to pump and haul, or we make this deferral and set this up and take care of this to get her moving. So I'm very comfortable with the deferral. I came here tonight wanting to do a deferral on this for this homeowner so she can move forward. Mr. Powell.
Why don't we do it? I think we can accomplish both items. None of you probably understand the process in order to get a septic field approved. She's not going to be able to get a system approved in 2 weeks, even 30 days.
You're correct. In correction, she already had a permit from the county to replace it.
She has a permit to be able to repair the system?
Yes.
She had a permit and the county sanitarian rescinded the permit once he realized that our code said 200 feet from the property.
Well, that would have been good information to have in our board packet.
Yeah. So the option might be to, you're right, that does change things, and we should probably hurry up on this discussion. I just have to be, straight up with everyone that if we want to extend sewers, there are ways to do it. I did exactly this. I extended a sanitary sewer across homes as a connection, as a service connection to a home. That was done in 2 weeks' time to eliminate an emergency situation. And now it's going through the process of a state permit. Totally legal, but I went between the lines a little bit, and we have to be somewhat progressive on this. Otherwise, we could sit back and just let government do what it does. Nothing.
Well, we're not doing nothing. We're doing everything that we can do. And we are pulling proper permits and going under proper reviews when we design and build sanitary sewers.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down with you and discuss that we can do it differently.
If we design this, we're going to have several $1,000s just in permit fees and design. If we have any hope of getting this approved by Oakland County at any time, then I feel like we need to follow contract obligations with Commerce Township in Oakland County. No, not only that, but this is a pressurized sanitary system. There will be maintenance required on this. I don't know how that, is going to be accomplished under our contract for maintenance with Oakland County if the system hasn't been properly approved. And
so can we have 2 meetings? Can we have a meeting, staff and myself, and then another meeting of the board to be able to open it up and allow the board to ask questions and understand things?
I can meet with you at any time.
Yeah, Mr. Lilly.
I'm very supportive of tabling this issue for the ordinance amendment, but I really believe that there's more immediate time needed to fix this lady's particular problem. And I don't
agree.
That long to have that.
Again, just to comment quickly on the comment. I wasn't bringing this to the board to discuss one property. That's why it wasn't in your package. However, I know this resident emailed you directly. I've spoken with this resident and emailed several times. So I think we had all the details that we needed to, make an assessment with her particular case.
Thank you. Mr.
I was
Roman?
just surprised today to find that not in my packet, so it wasn't
mine
even
either.
on my radar as of yesterday that there was a particular situation that applied to.
And it wouldn't have been because you just sent it out at late evening on Monday. Mr. Roman?
So if the intent of the special board meeting is to come up with a way to take these properties out of the ordinance, in other words, let these properties defer, and you've got an emergency now, why not just let her repair the septic field now? And Lisa, yeah.
The intent, when I suggested the special meeting, my intent was we do a rapid amendment to the zoning ordinance and have a meeting in a week or two to come up with the language so you can actually move forward with the ordinance amendment that would give Aaron the authority without having to do these various agreements and or amend the language to what the township feels is more appropriate.
Every time we've tried to amend an ordinance quickly,
and that's why I
there are
say,
issues.
and that's why I say we limit it to just those immediate issues that are essentially on the agenda for today.
I know. Look, Mike Powell and I and Mike McAdams years ago tried to do a lot of that. And every time we thought we had an ordinance fixed, a whole lot of other exceptions, we opened other cans of worms. And if the board's willing to help this lady out today, why not just do it?
All right, well, you know, the board wishes to have a subsequent meeting of which I will come up with that. But in the meantime, I don't want to beat this horse to death. So I'm going to make a motion to allow a deferral.
There's a motion on the board already, Mr. Cole.
No, I don't. I believe Aaron brought up the language, but he can't make the motion.
I think there was a motion to table.
Rick, you made a motion to table and I support it. I will withdraw my support.
Withdraw, and I will withdraw my motion. Thank you, Mr. Powell. So now I'll make a motion to offer a deferral to excuse me one moment.
Was it 55 Justwood
Lane, correct. And instruct the attorney to draft a document to reflect the
I'll
board's
support.
I have motion, I have support. Any questions, Lisa? Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Cowell.
Yes, with comment. Yes, I was, but we will have a meeting within 10 business days. I'll set up some sort of a Zoom meeting so we can do this discussion. Immediately, I'm instructing Mr. Potter to reach out to Mr. Powell and also the township engineer for consultation, and along with the township attorney to start the framework for resolution of these issues to be brought to the first workshop session for the board to look at potential resolution. Thank you. We have a motion.
Supervisor, just quick clarification. It will be a special meeting or a workshop in 10 days?
Well, call the special meeting, call the workshop. It'll be one or the other.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay. Okay, we have motion, we have support. Motion carries. Thank you very much on that issue. That brings us to item 12E, deferral of sanitary ordinance 38-514. Looky there.
We just did that.
Get used to having this conversation because it's going to keep coming back. There's about probably 200 or 300 properties in the township.
We're gonna fix it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Mr. Lilly.
Yeah, on regards to the next issue, the deferral, I'd like to ask Lisa, are all of the deferral agreements currently being recorded at the county in case there is a sale of property?
It is being recorded. if they haven't already started the process of the sale of the property.
I expressed to Rick today a concern that I had regarding the sale of a piece of property that happened that on the morning of the sale of the property, that it was not disclosed to the new buyer that the previous owner had authorized and made an agreement with the neighbor to force to allow them to have to put in underground electrical and underground gas about 1,200 feet up from the road on this piece of property. Now, this buyer was not aware of that agreement that had been made that morning. I'm concerned about the fact that people that are in the process of selling their property, that we're giving it a deferment that is going to have maybe a profound effect from the buyer of the property. That buyer typically comes in and buys something and pretty much stretches his pennies to the end and then find out, oh my gosh, the assessment that was made by another party, not by me, but another party that I'm not subject to. So this is a case that actually happened most recently, and I'm concerned about the intent of this reading to sell the property, but I can't afford a special assessment, but I'm going to pass it on possibly, or actually possibly in reality to the new purchaser. So I'm a little bit concerned about that most of the people that we've considered, seem to be having, we've never even talked about the ordinance of maybe making deferments that are subject to people owning the property for a while, but maybe subject to payoff on sale or reduction on sale. This kind of concerns me a little bit because of that history that I just recently experienced.
Terry,
Okay.
if I might speak to that real quick.
Mr. Pop.
Our deferral agreements that we've done since I've been here have all been recorded. They are discoverable by any title company. They also all include language that subject heirs and assigns to the deferral agreement. They do ride with the land. And it really is up to the buyer of a home to do their due diligence. They are discoverable the way we record these. I can't speak to folks that don't do their due diligence and make sure they check these things. But we're not sneaking these through. They definitely are recorded at the Register of Deeds as an agreement.
Maybe typically speaking, though, after people a title search and they're going to borrow money on their home, typically the board or the bank will make them pay off that loan, which typically can hurt somebody pretty bad. But, that's my concerns that I expressed earlier to meeting with Rick and Mike.
Mr. Roman.
So this particular home that we're talking about is a corner home. It has frontage along M59, which has a sewer main. It's willing to tap into it. Terry, your concern is well found. Your concern is that if a sewer line goes down Elkinford, who's going to pay for the main along that property line on Elkinford for this home? And I know, Aaron, it was your thought that this home would not be included if there was a sewer line put down Elkinford, because they wouldn't benefit from it. Janine, if you're still listening, can you possibly pipe in and either verify or just credit that statement?
You're muted still.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase your question? Because I don't really understand what you're asking.
Sure. So if you've got a corner home that connects to the sewer system along one of the streets, and then the other street abutting the property agrees to do an SAD for a sewer main, would that property be included in the district for the new main
And you said they're already connected to the sewer?
on M59, correct?
There's no benefit to them for this new sewer line. So no, you
Right.
cannot charge somebody that doesn't benefit.
That's correct.
Terry, does that satisfy your concern?
That would, if that's actually what our ordinance, but I believe that there's somewhere in our ordinance that says corner parcels must pay for both frontages.
You have that in your board packet. It's 38-514 of the sanitary ordinance on my memo. I copied it and quoted it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But again-
this is a scenario that we also probably should fix in some kind of a workshop because
We get back to
Agree,
the same scenario again where
agree.
we're putting an unfair burden upon them. And then the system again goes back to that quilt patchwork assembly of which is detrimental.
correct.
Now, there is a caveat to that, everyone. If in fact they did not pay for the main out in Elizabeth Lake Road, then they should have paid the lateral benefit fee, what we used to call the non-direct fee, but the lateral benefit fee to have that sewer available in Elizabeth Lake Road. They should not get a free sanitary sewer. So if they did not pay for the sanitary in Elizabeth Lake Road, even though they tapped it, then they should have to pay for it along in front of their house.
Yeah. Mike, this particular house is the one that has a sewer on M59. Okay.
I understand, but they didn't pay for the sewer, did they?
When the sewer went down 59 in that area, I would have to look back and find out what the history was as to who paid for what. That may have been for which.
Mike, we did apply the lateral benefit fee to this property.
So that means that they did not pay for a sewer at all. They got it for free. So they should be included in the SAD if one comes along. So some research needs to be done, Rick.
Well, our fee ordinance says if they haven't contributed to the cost, actually our ordinance and our fee ordinance both say that if they haven't contributed to the cost of the main, then the lateral benefit fee would apply, which is $2,100 in additional connection charges.
Right.
Their cost estimate does include that, but nothing in our ordinance says that then we would force them to pay for contribution to an SAD. In fact, it says the opposite. If paid contribution by way of an SAD or any other means of development, then they would not have to pay the lateral benefit fee. So we've a little bit of a gray area in a conflicting ordinance, the way 38-514 would be applied in this case. I would like to get these folks a variance to this ordinance, or not a variance, but a deferral of this ordinance. Again, this is 59 that we're talking about, the 5-lane highway, right across the street from the township building. That in addition to the setback of the main and the right of ways, the value of that extension would likely exceed the value of that home. In addition to that, another situation where now I've got a flushing structure, one house into the neighborhood where I would never want to have an additional structure. They're expensive, even, if we are able to get some approval for going with the 8 all the way through the structure, we're still probably talking about a $12,000 to $15,000 structure. It doesn't make sense to build this system in this way. So I need to have some kind of a mechanism to allow these properties to get sold. Otherwise, effectively, I feel like this house is not going to get sold, and it will probably sit out and become dilapidated. Ultimately, whatever else is going to happen.
So can you and I meet on this one as well, Aaron?
We can meet at any time you'd like about anything.
Gentlemen, I want to defer to Lisa. Lisa.
What, we're talking about two different things here. The
Yes.
question addressed to Janine is under PA 188 and what the law allows you to assess people. And what Aaron's talking about is what the ordinance provides. And those are two different things. You cannot specially assess property that's not benefiting from it. under PA 188, period. So if somebody's already connected, they're not benefiting and you can't specially assess them. So if you're going to install that main and specially assess the property owners, then who's going to absorb that cost? It's the remaining property owners. Unless you're saying, then that property owner, that property who you're considering a deferral for, is then going to have to pay the cost lump sum unrelated to an SAD, which they would have no benefit in.
It would seem like you couldn't even do it. Could you even do a deferral in this situation, Lisa? It wouldn't make any sense.
I think, Lisa, if you could offer up an alternate solution, if you have it in mind, I would love to hear it at this point.
Amend the ordinance?
Yep. Unfortunately, these folks, under our current ordinance, then the way I understand it, I'm going to have to force these folks on the corner to extend main across M59. There is no branch flushing structure on the main on M59, so they're going to have to put in a branch flushing structure, cross 59, across their frontage, and put in an intermediate flushing structure to provide for a clean out access point for that section of main. This likely, this house is never going to sell if we have to force these folks to do this in this case.
That's great.
You're probably talking about a $50,000 extension.
Yep. Aaron, are you talking about the extension along Elkinford?
To connect from M59 to the southern property boundary of this parcel 845 Elkinford that's on the corner.
That's an undue, unnecessary hardship on the individual.
I think I have a solution for that. I need to go over with Aaron.
All right. Well, at the moment, Aaron, do you know their situation as far as has the house been sold? Is it, she just doing this to fix it up, to put it up for sale? What do you know? What can you inform the board on?
I know that she paid for a cost estimate, which we've completed. We've gotten the MDOT permit today. So we are ready to go on the connection. The cost estimate for the connection to directionally bore and connect in on M59 was $25,608. Likely if she had sanitary down Elkinford, that would be probably closer to $19,000 or $20,000 when it was all said and done. That does include $3,500 in contingency. So we're really talking about, roughly $22,000. So not ultra expensive. No, we did about a year or two ago, we had some folks down Elkinford that were looking at potentially an SAD. We left a mailer in that area that went down in a ball of flames. And, they just didn't have anywhere near enough support to warrant the lady actually starting an official petition. She elected not to. So we did some cost estimates for some of those mains down there. We did not include adding a structure on every home. In other areas in the township, they've allowed folks to kind of snake private across, different angles across right away to try to get into something that was close. Usually down the road, then those have to be abandoned and relocated when the mains come through. Sometimes they're in the way. There's just a lot there. And we just haven't looked at cost estimates for where we've got to segment this thing along one or two houses at a time. Looking at the possibility of even township initiated SADs, I would ask the township to strongly consider going to a complete segment of what was master planned so that we can build the sanitary system and maintain it in a cost-effective manner. Considering these sanitary sewers typically could be in service anywhere, 80 to 100 years is not uncommon.
Right.
Mr. Lilly.
I'd just like to ask a question to Aaron. Where on M59, where is the typical connection that's being proposed would go across M59?
Directly across the road from this property.
Okay, is any consideration given to putting the line going across M59 at Elkinford?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So what we're talking about here is we have a cost estimate for connecting an individual house lead for 845 Elkinford on the north side of M59.
You're going to drill a line across M59
for, I'm sorry, say that again?
You're going to drill a line across M59 to service one building.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. We have plenty of areas in the township where we'll have to directional.
That's not my question. My question is, has any thought been given to drill that line across M59 at Elkinford and consider the cost difference between a normal residential line coming across and what the size of the line would be at Elkinford? That I would have no problem considering the township contribution to make that line big enough that at least we have a stub at Elkinford.
Yes.
We have to connect in at Elkinford. And that's part of all of this discussion that's taken place, that
right.
If there's other alternatives, if we put our heads together, then making a quick decision at this point. So just another thought.
Yes, so I do have cost estimates. We have done some analysis of segment sizing with our master plan. Now, I just want to reiterate, nothing in our ordinance gives me the right to make any determination of township contribution. So again, the board here has put me in a situation where I literally have to bring all of these situations to you. I have no power under our ordinance to make any determination of contribution or any variance whatsoever.
I did not say that. I'm asking you to bring the information to the board for us to consider that. And I don't have any problem with developing a criteria to allow you to make some decisions, but I think the ultimate is the agreement, so to speak, needs to be in the board's hand, that it gives another 5, 6, 7 people to make some suggestions and considerations that don't happen. And I think it would be reasonable to relook at, talk about costs and whatever. I'm not agreeing to anything unless I see something, but it seems feasible. We can run a residential line in the middle of their property across 59 with that kind of expense and expect them to pay for it. We certainly could use that stub and a catch basin at Elkinford to hook into a future project. So I'd certainly consider that as an individual board member.
Okay. Well, another topic for the workshop. As we can see, this is part of solving these
I
problems.
have a quick question.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, Terry and Aaron, you would bore west of Elizabeth Lake Road and east of the curb cut-in and that would be close enough to encompass Elkinford and what we need to encompass across 59, north of 59.
I'm just thinking about drilling across M59. It doesn't make sense to drill a residential line across and after at a future date, drill a line.
Right, so if there is a spot, if we go right in the middle, I think we can solve both. Correct?
I think consideration in the planning stages ought to look at the potential of what these costs are.
Aaron, is that about where you're thinking? You know what I'm talking about, the curb cut in?
Just to be clear, the proposed line going across there. Actually, I need to ask Mike a question because I see him shaking his head about the directionally boring on M59. So we have a sanitary sewer system along the north side of M59. Are you considering that or suggesting that that is not available sanitary sewer system? What about the property next door to the property on Elkinford that isn't adjacent? Now, under our current ordinance, they would be subject to the 200-foot rule. You've got available public sanitary in the right of way that abuts their property, and their property is within 200 feet of that pipe. So in those cases, we would.
Only saying there's always a couple different ways to do things and be interested in exploring those possibilities. So
Let Aaron finish. Go ahead, Aaron.
There's no technical difficulty other than simply an MDOT permit with profile views, make sure that we don't have a conflict with other utilities in that right of way. But once we have that, there's nothing that would prevent us from connecting that and making those sanitary systems work. So I need to know this information so that we can, we probably have 100 properties down M59 in White Lake Township that, many of them are residential properties. Even commercial properties, including our own here, use basically a Barnes OGP 2022L pump, various size horsepowers, but they, there's nothing technical that would prevent us from connecting a home on the south side of M59 to the sanitary sewer on the north side of M59. The alternative to that is then we would have to run an additional sanitary sewer along the right of way on the south side of M59. I think that would be the most catastrophically cost-ineffective way of designing the sanitary system that we could ever even come up with.
You know what?
On Elkinford is on the corner. What it sounds like the township board is asking me to do is bring to you cost estimates to extend sanitary sewer across her frontage, and the township would then propose a payment of the sanitary sewer. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the way.
that's basically what I was saying. Our engineer, we've spent a lot of money with J&A to do a township master plan.
We have it. I already have the cost estimates.
And now you're telling me we don't even have any idea what it's going to take to cross 59 to Elkinford. It doesn't make sense to me.
Terry, that's not at all what I'm saying. We have the cost estimate, but that's
I'd like to see them.
That's not the direction that I've been given in ordinance. If that's what you would like me to do going forward, I will do that.
Yeah,
I can say is you're asking me to make an intelligent decision on something that they don't have all the facts for. And I'm like Mike.
He wasn't, because Aaron
not the first go around here.
Aaron wasn't requested to provide that information. He was simply looking for a deferral from frontage on one road. That was where all this came from. Nothing to do with pouring under the road. But now that we have discussed this, that information would be nice to have, and I think we can have that conversation. We'll bring that up at a further workshop. Aaron, is their system in failure or not failure? Do you know?
Yes, it's in failure.
Okay, it's in failure. Okay.
So you guys, what Aaron is saying and what Terry's saying can in fact be done the same. Aaron's problem is we have, as a board, have not given him the ability to think outside the box. And if the board allows him to do that, he can bring all kinds of options to the board. It just is going to take some commitment from the board to help financially these property owners, because they cannot do it by themselves. Terry's point is right on the money. Aaron is right on the money. We just have to marry those 2 points together. We can make it happen, guys.
Okay.
This deferral was essentially the best option that I had going right now to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Have a set of very rigid ordinances. They don't fit every scenario. But unfortunately, the ordinance doesn't really grant me any authority to make any of these types of decisions. So at the same time, I have a resident in need, and we're trying to solve their problem, in the best way we can for both cases, but really nothing gives me that ability. So this was the best we had to work with right now. So that's the way we went with it.
Aaron, your best guess on the turnaround time if we had cost estimates to do a main extension, okay, what do you think the turnaround time is from now till she could actually hook up?
Well, I can tell you that it would take probably a month to get through an Oakland County review. And that's if I had a design done tomorrow, which we do not have. A cost estimate and the design totally very far apart. We have to survey it, realistically, I think the closest we could possibly do it if the board could approve all of the costs without public hearings, probably 6 months.
I have a suggestion to cut that down to 2 weeks, and I'd like to meet with Aaron tomorrow if I can.
Yeah, that's the conversation you guys can
And
talk.
call him, I call him all the time.
Okay, so
I
at this
think
point,
Mike and I have discussed this already, and I am willing to meet with you tomorrow. I don't, I can't speak for the rest of the board, obviously. And nothing in the ordinance gives me any decision power, so.
well, we need to put together a potential solution to this and possibly bring it back to our workshop meeting that we're going to have. That's what I would do. So unfortunately, I see that this particular item, because of its complexity in nature, may need to be tabled. For that meeting.
I think it needs to be tabled.
I support that.
All right, I will make a motion to table this to be brought forth at a future meeting. Looking for support. Liz, did you support that?
Support.
I did.
Support.
It's supported by Liz Smith. Roll call vote.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Kowal,
Yes,
7 yes.
motion carries. We will have that conversation very shortly. Item 13, it's just basically an FYI to let you know that we spent some time in the last week or so putting together some CARES Act information and applications. We have multiple different funds that we've applied for. One of them is the hazard pay, which will go through the state of Michigan, that we have applied for, that will give up to each one of our emergency first responders a potentially up to $1,000 bonus, and that comes from the state of Michigan through the federal government. And then the other item that we did is we've submitted reimbursements for operational expenditures during this time. And the act was very broad and very generous. So we compiled a complete list of all the expenditures that we believe through our interpretation of the application are applicable, and it exceeded $1 million. Wow. So we're putting it out there, and I'll let you know what happens. So we'll try to get that money back in. Next thing I want to go into trustee comments at this time. Andrea?
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Kowal. As the Parks and Rec liaison, we finally were able to meet July 8th via Zoom. We were talking about the master plan for our newest park, which happens to be Stanley Park, and the work that's involved with that. I also had my historical society friend pull up information on the elections since that's next month from 1900. There's some really great names in here. James Cuthbert beat Joseph Jackson 102-70. The clerk was Bert Farrell. The treasurer was William Brendel. Justice was William Stockwell. The school inspector is Charles Scarrett. The highway commissioner was Patrick Ormond. The board of review was George Bogie. Constable was Andrew Scarrett and Edgar Hathaway. Also that same time, which was July 9th, the Historical Society held their general meeting for the month. And at that time, out of the safety concern for our older, most vulnerable older group in White Lake Township, the general consensus of that meeting was to cancel the 2020 Fisk Farm Fall Festival, which happens in September. With that, I'm gonna use my normal greeting way of be safe and be healthy. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Just like to say, any township residents that are listening, to make sure they get out August 4th and vote, cast their vote. It's a very important thing to do. And to all the people that are on the board that are running for re-election, good luck. It's been a pleasure working with you for the last 4 years. And the planning commission will be meeting again on August 6th. I don't know if it's actually going to take place or not. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Liz Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I want to give a library update. Bear with me here. I'll try to skim it so I give correct information. I apologize to the residents. I have a second screen here, so if you see me look to the right or down, I'm following along on the agenda. So the White Lake Township Library is now open for limited grab and go service. But basically what that means is their hours are from Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 11 to 5. So what they're hoping to do is just keep a 30-minute limit while you're in the building. So just, come in, get what you need and scoot on out. They're operating at 25% capacity so that your visit is brief and purposeful. They are offering virtual programs. Weekday evenings, the library is open for visits of 30 minutes for browsing, self-checkout. Curbside delivery is still available. Face masks are mandatory. Programs will continue to be offered virtually and outdoors. No gathering at this time. They have increased their sanitation practices and social distance guidelines. Browsing in the stacks is limited to 2 people per aisle, please, with 6 feet apart. The library materials will be quarantined upon return and before they're available again for checkout. For trying to be as safe as possible and follow the CDC requirements. And then as COVID-19 levels progress, the library will progress as well, and you can stay up to date on their website and Facebook. And then I want to take a moment and thank our election staff. They have just been incredibly and outstanding in their dedication right now. They are so busy assisting our residents, and I really want to thank them for their extraordinary dedication right now. So thank you so much for helping our residents. Just a quick reminder that everything this board does is public. Please don't run to Facebook without facts. We are here to help you and serve you. Everything we do is public. Our meeting minutes, our agendas, our videos, our board packets, everything you could think of is readily accessible, and we are readily accessible to help you. So please reach out to a board member. We are here to help you and serve you. And lastly, I've had the pleasure of talking to so many residents lately, and they have shared with me how happy they are with White Lake. And so thank you for sharing that with me. It is our pleasure, this board, to serve you and help you. And I also want to remind you to get out the vote on August 4th. It is your civic duty to vote. So please do so and enjoy your summer. Stay safe, healthy. Prayers for all of our essential workers and our police and fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lilly.
Rick, I'd just like to say on behalf of my full-time employees and the part-time help we have, the election workers that are going to be participating, we're just overwhelmed in our office with the amount of absentee ballots that are coming in. Our usual count is 4,000, and as of the other day, we were over 6. So people are really submitting ballots already and streaming in pretty heavy. So I want to congratulate my staff for as of yesterday that we were almost up to date as far as processing applications and getting votes ballots out within about 24-hour period. Really pleased with them. I got to say thank you to Kathy for her presentation tonight. yeah, when I started here, I always told my employees that I will never ask you to do anything that I want to do. But I tell you, she's almost going to these classes, even though I was about 2 weeks late of getting my certificate from Kathy's. It was an interesting process, and hopefully it'll pay off in the future. So I appreciate. I always want to comment on the board tonight. The discussion that took place for me is not to be this meeting to Aaron. Like I say, I appreciate everything that Aaron's done. The board members are so responsive to all of the questions and whatever, and particularly for the trustees' point of view, that you're going to have to dig in your feet too and take the sewer issue and water very seriously. I know, like Mike does, and I do in particular. So I want to say thank you for always being part of that participation. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
Thanks, Rick. I also want to remind residents to vote Tuesday, August 4th. Want to talk a little bit about property tax bills that our residents have received. If you've not received a tax bill yet, and you usually get one, please call the Treasurer's Department. We'll be more than happy to email that bill to you. Also, to remind residents that are paying by check, the Township Hall is still closed. If you need to get in, it's appointment only. But just to remind everyone, we do have a drop box that can be used to pay your taxes by check. It's built right into the western wall of Township Hall. It's got a black metal sign above it that says drop box. We have had great participation this year with people paying their taxes online. Just to remind everybody, in order to pay your taxes online, you can go to the Township website, click the Treasurer's Department. There is a link called Pay Local Taxes. You can pay by electronic check online for $2. It's either $2.50 or $2.75. You choose that option. You'll enter your bank account and routing number along with the code on your tax bill, and you're done. Real simple. We've had great participation. I encourage you all to take advantage of the electronic check online. That's all I had, Rick. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First of all, I want to tell this board that I have been just blessed by serving with all of you, and I look forward very much to serving with everyone again for the next 4 years if our residents so decide. And I want to stress how important it is for our residents to get out and vote if you haven't already by absentee ballot. I also wanted to announce that one of our oldest, if not the oldest resident in White Lake Township passed away last week. A month and a half before her 102nd birthday, Evelyn Hart passed away, my mother-in-law, and it was a way that all of us might like to go at 102 years old and passed away peacefully in her sleep. So that's quite an ending to a long life, and it was so interesting talking to her, going from a covered wagon going to church versus today's electronics. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about sanitary sewers and water mains, and sometimes it's at my detriment, not only for your patients, but I make a lot of money designing engineered septic systems, and I'd like to give that up to extend sanitary sewers in White Lake Township. And I believe there are good ways to do it, and we can do it if this board desires it. And I'd like the opportunity to present to the board different options that, quite frankly, Aaron has not had available to him before. And I think that would go a long way for him to bring options to this board instead of just the same old box that he's had to bring before. So the last item was I'm hoping that the Planning Commission eventually brings some modifications of the zoning ordinance back to this board. There are some issues that we see on the ZBA over and over again that should probably be modified in the zoning ordinance. And Sean has been putting together a list of items that the planning commission needs to take on and bring to the township board. We are being asked more and more to approve larger and larger garages with overhead living spaces, almost like mother-in-law suites on separate garages. Unfortunately, they really don't fit in with the neighborhood when you have almost two houses on the same lot. And so we need to address that a little bit more in the zoning ordinance. And I think Sean has a good handle on that. But thank you all for your patience putting up with me, and have a great couple weeks before we meet again.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Well, you know, we have a very unique opportunity as a nation. You know, we're about to head into another election cycle where you as citizens of this great nation have the opportunity to determine the course of our nation and our local governments. The right to vote should not be taken lightly at all. Many of our forefathers died to give us independence and afford us that vote. We as a society, though, often take it for granted. Sometimes a handful of votes can make the difference. So Tuesday, vote August 4th, we all count. And let's be thankful that we can vote, okay? The township is open, Mr. Roman. We're just open by appointment. And
Excuse me.
yeah, we are open. We're not closed. We are open by appointment. We are adhering to the executive order at this moment in time and monitoring that situation closely. So we are trying to live with that and service our customers. We get a few people that don't understand, but most people, I think, are very understanding of the current situation. I would like to let everyone know that in the back, kind of slowly moving along, the public safety building is taking shape in its conceptual drawing, and the township concept drawing township drawing is moving forward also. And I'm hoping that within a few weeks, the Civic Center Development Committee will hopefully be able to have another date and have another meeting. It's proven to be challenging, but we're not letting things just fall to the wayside. The roundabouts at Elizabeth Lake Road and Tegadyne and Oxbow are now postponed until most likely 2022. We will see what's going to happen. However, we have been in contact with the Road Commission to work with myself, the Parks Department, Mr. O'Neill, in conjunction with the roundabout at Tegadyne, Elizabeth Lake Road, and its impact and how it's going to dovetail into the Township Triangle Trail, which is moving forward at this moment ever so slowly. So hopefully we can get some trails in there so that the folks can see that we're actually doing something that they passed a millage to do. So that's the most important thing. And if we can start that segment around the township, that'll open up our area. We've had a lot of interest in the park, in Stanley Park. We've had people ask when it's going to be open. We're still in the process of securing and making sure that some of the trees are still safe in that area. And then we'll start looking for that master planning process that Mr. O'Neill has been working on and will brief us on, I'm sure, at the next meeting. So with that, I'd say all of my board members, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you for the last 4 years. I believe we've accomplished a lot of things, and there's much more for us to do as we move forward. So we'll see as the public comes out on Tuesday the 4th, what direction and shape our board will take, and we'll go on, and the township will go on. The board has changed and morphed many times over the years, and it's continued to do so. Sometimes for the better, I like to think our board, and sometimes for the maybe not so great, but we're still moving forward. So with that, I say good night. God bless White Lake, and I make a motion to adjourn. Looking for support.
Support.
I support from Liz Smith. Roll call vote. You're muted, Mr. Lilly. Jerry, your mute's on. There we
Why
go.
don't we all just say yes?
Show of hands.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Unanimous. We are now adjourned. 9:41 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Thank you, Ben, for hosting.
No problem. Glad to do it. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Feel free to log off. I just have to let this wind down for a moment here.